Alright, so I finished popping out all the little pieces, and I found it also is called G10 fiberboard. Didn't know that. Definitely not fibrous, but anyway. Also in the package is the motor mounts in here, so I'm just going to open this up because that's a main part of this, holds it together. And inside there is also a bunch of screws and some more stuff to, well, okay, so this stuff here is fiberboard. This stuff is Durlin, so I was right in the first place, which is good. More screws to mount them up. I'm just going to quickly pop that little piece out. There's one over here too. Quick and easy. Go away. Alright, so I'm just going to start by looking at this. Just punch them together really quick. I guess according to the director of flight test and the designer of this system, Chad Capper, he just wanted it to be really quick and easy to build. I like the idea. It does snap together really well, to a point where you don't even need glue or anything like that. So as the fat end of this piece here is going to go towards the top, and just slides in that little hole. I don't know if you can see that, but the little hole in the center, that's where it just punches through, or goes into rather. Yeah, just like that. So it'll end up just like this, and you can put it in that way, but I wasn't thinking ahead. Now I get to do it this way. And see, that's what's awesome about this kit, is just popping pieces together. Super simple. Actually, that's probably the way to do it. In case you're wondering why I have this towel down, it's in case I happen to lose any screws or pieces or little itty bitty pieces. And man, this is a lot harder than it looks. Okay. So, ow. Dropping pieces. Alright. So I guess you actually have to slide this in down here. That little lip, you're going to have to slide that in. Alright, so I really don't think this will break in a crash. Man, I hope not. I don't have any spares. But not supposed to crash anyway. That's my motto, I guess. Alright, that's really annoying, so I'm just going to use this one. So you just bend the Durlin back a little bit and slide that in there. It's a lot harder than it should be, but what are you going to do? And for this one, you just do the same. Slide it into the Durlin piece. And it should just all snap together. Like so. And I put that on backwards. Pay attention. Yeah, you don't want to do that. I just completely put this on backwards. Put both sides on backwards. Anyway. Yeah, that's on correctly. Dropping more pieces. Anyway. So you slide this in here. Like so. And it's just all clicked together. Pretty durable. Yeah. So that's one done. I'm going to go ahead and do the other one, and I'll get back to you. Alright, so I finished the two straight mounts. These are going to end up on the front. And basically, when you end up taking the wooden spar, you just slide it in there, mark your holes. You do want to check both ways, make sure whichever is a tighter fit, better fit. And so end up looking like that. You do end up screwing in on the top with the included screws, but anyway, I'm going to go ahead, put all this off to the side, and get onto the tilt mount. It's a little bit more complicated of build. This is the only downfall really of a tricopter, is you do have all these little push rods, and you end up having to have a servo to tilt the back disc and the entire motor, and that's how you get your yaw control. And it's not something that you really want to skimp on, because being able to steer your tricopter is a good thing. So again, same deal, just a lot more pieces, a lot more complicated. So I'm going to do the same thing, pop out all these pieces. You can see there, they're already pretty floppy from the laser cutter that they use. I'm going to go pop out all these pieces, and I'll get back to you when I'm ready to start building. Okay, so I went and I popped out all the little pieces of Durlin, and that took me a little while, but in the end came out pretty nice. I also went and unpackaged the motor mount, which is this here. Again, it's the same fiber material that they used on the straight mounts. And here's all the little pieces for the pull, the mounting screw. All these screws are in fact the same, so it's okay if you mix them up, so I'm just going to toss that over to the side. Again, I guess they use some form of piano wire, and I'm not sure if you can see that, but those are the two pull wires. You are going to have to put a at least one 90 degree on each one of these, and then over here you just end up running those into these pieces. They're really tiny, don't lose them. You have a bunch of other little screws and whatnot. This is just a locking washer sort of thing that you use on the pivot, which is this. Again, a lot of really little pieces. I'm going to try and take my time. I do suggest basically staring at this for a while, trying to figure it out. Or you could just watch ahead on this video and watch me figure it out. Your choice. But I'm just going to go ahead and try and figure this out. Here we go. So a couple of these pieces, so I'm going to say that this is where these go. It's a little different. That little vertical piece that I was having so much trouble with, that isn't, you don't use that over here, which is good because I was having a lot of trouble with it. Okay, so far so good. There is a servo mount for this that you use. It's just going to be a little 9-gram servo that we'll be using. If you have the extra cash, definitely go to a digital servo with it. It will be a higher resolution, so it's as you're tilting the yaw back and forth, it's basically gonna feel nicer, and it won't be as steppy, I guess you could say. So all these pieces here are the same, so I'm going to guess that they go in like this. Or like this, maybe. Yeah, like that. Not exactly sure how that there works. Oh, this is on the doy. Okay, first mistake. But these are going to end up staying up here, mounted. So yes, once you're finished getting that ready to go, start with the motor mount. I was just not really paying attention, I guess. So start, you can choose whatever side you want to be the top. There's just little scuff up here by my thumb. So I'm just going to make this the bottom so it stays really nice up top. I could just go and paint over that, but I don't want to, so I won't. And keep everything facing the same way as to not confuse myself. Down here is just going to be one of the guides, I guess. Press that into place, get a really nice positive click, which is really nice. And I guess just slide all of these in. They're all the same, no need to worry about getting these mixed up. That's how that's going to work. Alright. There's probably... Okay, so I was wrong. This is the piece that goes vertically in the middle of here. I'm just going to go and pull these out for now. Okay, maybe not. And you want this to go into the middle slot of these horizontal pieces. Oh, that, I guess that's just going to rest there. Again, this is my first time building one of these, or any of these different. There's, like I said, probably in one of my earlier videos, is you can just go ahead and build really whatever you want with this. That's why we decided to go with this frame itself. They offer a couple different tricopter frames. This one you could go ahead and build, as I said earlier, all the way up to hexacopter if you wanted to. And I bet you could probably figure out a way to make that into an octocopter, but you might be pushing the design limits, but I digress. And this one's having a little bit more trouble going on. Oh, there we go. So that went in relatively easily. Alright. And these are probably going to go up here. These little pieces, this is what I'm talking about right now. I'm not sure if I'm getting all of this in the frame, but you should still be able to see everything I'm doing, have a decent idea of it. That's probably going to go up through there. Maybe not. Probably not. Yeah. Just a little befuddled with this build right now. I'm not exactly sure how each piece is supposed to go together. I have a pretty good idea just by looking at a couple of the pictures that they supply. But that makes very little sense. Why that would be like that. Okay, so right now my biggest question is why those three aren't level. And if they were, this would work perfectly fine. As you can see, once you get your servo, my parts haven't come in yet. Once you get your servo, you're just going to mount it right in here with the gear end out here. And then you're just going to put full length servo horn on it. And then you just have the pull rods that will go into that. Again, I'm just trying to figure out exactly why these aren't all the same height right now. Now, given I could do that cheap, but alright, so I'm just going to try and get this through here, which may or may not happen. You might just want to fiddle with it for a little bit until you get it just right, and then can start sliding it through. And not really sure if I'm getting all of this in frame. But, and now here's a good time to either have some nice pliers, nice thin pliers, which those are still too thick, or even just the your bits that you'll be using. And this is a really tight fit. I'm not sure exactly why I'm having so much trouble with this. I could have done something wrong, but I don't believe I did. Quickly pull this piece out, see if it, well, it's not going to let me pull it out. Tilt that around. Oh, I have this on backwards. Oh, that could be half the problem. Whoops. So that's probably the third time I've done that. So you might want to check the illustration every few seconds. Make sure you're doing everything correctly, as I have not been doing very well this build. Usually I'm a little bit better, but guess not today. Maybe this way it'll be just a tad easier. Can't see all the way through that just yet, but first has to go and finagle it around to get everything to fit. And sorry if I'm not getting all of this in frame, but I was just able to get that all the way through. I'm guessing there is no correct way to have that bend facing, but everything's now completed for the most part. Just going to take this little locking washer. Hopefully I have the correct driver to do it. I don't. So I'm just going to take my multi-tool and loosen it up. Maybe. Do I have to go and get the correct screwdriver for it? And there we go. Definitely want to loosen it up, at least until you can see completely through the little itty bitty hole in that. Tilt the tilt bracket off the side. Slide that on. And then tighten it back up with the correct size Allen wrench, which might be over here. Again, it's not. So definitely want to have a full complement of Allen wrenches or keys or whatever you happen to want to use. I didn't bring everything up with me from my workshop. So, and you probably want to leave one of these off, one of these little verticals. Maybe not, but I did find it a little bit easier because I left this off in the middle of that build process. I was able to get my big fat fingers in there. That little lock nut just fell off, lock bracket, whatever you want to call it. Alright, so the two side plates are now on. Everything is kind of almost finished. Again, if you can, definitely put this on as soon as possible. You might want to do is take some Loctite and Loctite that little set screw in there so it doesn't go sliding off mid-flight and you might run into a problem and losing this. I doubt it. It's a really tight fit. Definitely want to move that around quite a bit. Hopefully it'll loosen up over some time. Usually will. But I digress. So what you want to do with these is, if there's a little bit of, right now there is a little bit of plastic in the holes that you push these through. I'm not sure if you can see that, but there's a little hole right there, and on the other side too there's one. Just a little bit of melted plastic, which is annoying me. You also might want to have a X-Acto or other form of hobby knife. I just have my multi-tool on me today. I'm just going to try and open up that hill. You could also drill that hole out. You just want to make sure that you don't drill in too far and end up going through a bunch of other plastic pieces that you don't want to really mess up today. And also what I did notice is the two vertical landing gear mounts are similar with the straights, which is good. And if you break one, they're only a couple bucks on the Flight Test store website, which is where I got this. Great web show. Sorry. They did do a build video on this. If you want to check that out, it's probably better produced than this one. But just doing this to document it, make sure everything's done the way I want it done, per se. They did do a couple things wrong, I feel. They didn't show the entire build. It's also not of a tricopter. It's of a it's of a quadricopter. But anyway, so I'm going to hold off on these two, the push-pull system, until I get my servo in and I know exactly how long I need to make these, and then I can go and cut them afterwards. But basically what's going to happen is that's just going to go through there. You have a little screw that goes in on the top of this piece and it locks it in. Again, you want to Loctite that, and this end here will go through your servo arm, and then there's a little nut that you put on that. So that's now done. I'm just going to push all these pieces off to the side, and this is exactly why I have cloth out, actually. I'm going to go and put these back in a baggie, so that way they're relatively safe for now. And I'll get back to you and we'll start on the main frame of the tricopter build. Okay, so I have all the components for the main frame here. Should be a relatively quick and simple build. And the same deal with all the other stuff. Informational sheet, should be able to use it for some instructions if you so need it. And a couple of pieces, spare bag. This one here is just going to be a quick, same deal as with the Durlin pieces, pop everything out. With this, I am going to go and sand all the inside edges. They are a little bit rough, and be careful, you might get some splinters in you. But for the most part, a lot of these are already out. And this little centerpiece here, this is just a guide. Oh, broke that. Oh, so what? This here is just a mounting drill guide, I guess you could say. So you can go and take this and mark out all your holes for your to mount your landing gear and motor mounts on. I'll be doing that in a little bit. But first, I'm going to go and pop out all these little O's in here so that you can mount in whatever way you want. The great thing about this kit is that they're perfectly symmetrical. The one thing you do want to look out for is you can't rotate this 90 degrees and it won't have all the mounting brackets basically. So just be careful about that. I'm just going to go and pop out all these little pieces of wood. Should be really quick. Alright. And all these different holes allow for different mounting options, as I've said before, probably about a dozen times now. But you just want to be careful to make sure you know where these are going if you have a dog or something. Small children in your house or whatever, you don't want to be eating these, although they are just wood. Wouldn't be that healthy for you. Alright, so once we have all this, by the way, this is just a battery mount, so you just throw your Velcro through here. You can Velcro your battery to that. We will be using the camera mount instead. That's what we'll be using for our battery mount. You just mount the battery on the other half of the camera mount, and it comes out fine. So I'm just going to go through, sand basically all of these. I'll probably go and sand out the arms too. There will be wires rubbing up against these. I just don't want to lose a tricopter due to sharp edges. But again, you don't want to lose this piece here. It's the drill guide, I guess you could say. You can throw almost everything away except for that. I'm just going to go through and sand out all these edges, and I'll get back to you and we'll start basically mounting motor mounts. Okay, so I went and finished sanding all the inside edges of the hub kit, and I also did the outsides just to make it all nice. There will be wires running up against these. And I also did the same with all the edges on the booms. For the same reason I did it over here. There will be wires running next to or around these booms, so I had the sandpaper out, so I just went and sanded these up. So let's begin with the fitting of the mounts and whatnot. So I'm going to start with the tilt mount. Basically, you just don't want to force it too much, but you do want to make sure it fits in there. Whichever way has a better fit. You want it to be tight, but not extremely tight. Seems like both ways are pretty well off. So, and you want to have a nice, this is a gel, a really fine point pen, and just want to mark your holes. That one's done. Onto the straight mounts. And you want to do the same. You don't want to have the mount too far in. I don't know if you can see that, but you don't want it to be basically overlapping past like that much. That's about the most that you want to have it. I'd suggest even a little bit less. And you're just going to do the same. Mark out your holes. Actually, I want to check the other way first. Yeah. So just mark out your holes like so. And you can just put them off to the side. And this one, again, a pretty loose fit. Oh well. So do the same again. Mark out your hole. And there you go. Alright, so the motor mount ends are finished. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take this little piece of plywood that we took out when we first unboxed or unpackaged the main mount. This comes in the center of the battery mount, which is this little piece. It comes out right there. Make sure you save it. So what you're going to do is you're just going to line it up like so. Now this is for, doing this is for on the inside the hub. And you're just going to go, make sure that you're not tilting at 90 degrees. And draw out that one. You want to make sure that you can see your drill marks, I guess you could call them. Alright, so that should be good. So you're done with that for now. If you want to make, you might want to save that in case you want to do, say, like a quadricopter later on in time, or even a hexacopter, or even an octocopter if you have the will to do one. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drill all these out. And like I said earlier, I believe it's a 3/32 drill bit to drill these out. If not, I'll state so later. But I'm going to go drill these out. And another tip that I do have, because it's a multi-rotor and there isn't really a tail, although on tricopters there is a tail. But I'm going to end up painting the front two arms some sort of really bright coloring. Probably an orange or maybe even a lime green. You could go and get, say, lime green or orange props for your motors, and that'll work really well too. But I don't have any, so I'm just going to go and paint the arms. And you could go and paint your frame, paint your tail. I've seen some people use duct tape. I don't suggest it. It's duct tape's relatively heavy, especially when you start wrapping it around the boom. But so I'm going to go drill these out and probably paint them. What I do suggest you do is take some floss or even some string and put it through the hole that you just drilled, and then hang it up and spray it, airbrush it, whatever you want to do. And then let it dry, let it sit for probably a couple hours. I might hit mine with a heat gun, speed that process up. But I'm going to go ahead, drill these out, and I'll be back. Okay, so I went and drilled out all the holes for the booms, and I went and spray painted the two front booms a fluorescent red, which turned out to be more pink than fluorescent red, to be honest. But while those are drying, I'm going to go over the build for the tilt, because we didn't completely finish building this when we left it. So I'm going to go and pull out all the, or at least just the servo for this, and we'll get right to it. Okay, so as you can see, I have the Metal Gear servo that comes in the electronics kit. All the servo horns, the servo mount screws and whatnot, and the tricopter tail, the tilt mount, We had a little bit of trouble getting this together, but in the end it went together pretty well. So I'm going to start off with mounting the servo in here. Alright, so what you're going to do is there's a slot cut out already for the servo in here. You just use a little 9-gram servo, that's what it's built for. Or also mini servo, whichever you prefer. Right. And that's just going to end up in there like so. I'm just going to test fit everything before I start screwing things in, so I don't mess up. Never want to embarrass yourself like that. So I open up the servo horn package, which has the 2 mounting screws and then this little screw here. Use this one for mounting the servo horn onto a servo, basically. So has 2 straight servo horns. I'm probably gonna, I'm just gonna use the smaller one, and that should give us plenty of throw. There is this larger one. There is really no need for that much throw on a tricopter. If we do need it, I'll go back and I'll throw that on there, but I don't believe we'll need it. So what you want to do is I'm just going to press that on there and open up the tail hardware bag. So here's your 2 push rods, and right here are the 2 push rod mounting screws, I guess you could call them. A couple other pieces in here too. So I'm just going to pull this servo out if it allows me to, which it doesn't. So I'm going to pull off the servo horn instead. Just shimmy it off. Should come off relatively easily. We hope so. And these screws here basically are just going to go into here. You're going to have to tap it, which is really annoying. Or you could go and widen up that hole. But I'm going to take my time and tap these in, which might take a little bit of time. So you might want to widen up the hole. I'm just taking a small Phillips head and trying to widen up the hole a little bit, just to make it easier to start the threads, which it did not. Alright, so I'm going to pause the video now, and I'll go and get these into the outside hole on the servo horn. Just to save time, I'm just going to fast forward it and save your guys' time. Okay, so I was able to get these in. Took me a little bit, but basically what I ended up having to do was I had to take the little screw that comes with the servo that I used to mount the servo horn onto a servo, and I basically screwed that through the end. I don't know if you can see that, but I screwed that through the end mounting hole, and I went and basically just took the I guess you could say the push rod holder and put that through. And there are these little nuts, and those you don't want to forget, although I don't think these push rod mounts aren't going anywhere, seeing that they're threaded right into that plastic. So now that that's done, we can put that off to the side, and what we're going to do is fold that up. What we're going to do is basically bend the push rods so that they meet up down by where the servo horn would be. So I'm basically going to grab, that's about as much as I have to go through it, through the top piece there. I'm just going to bend it to a nice 90-degree angle. Alright. So there's a little bit of room left. Actually, there's quite a bit of room left on both ends, as you can hopefully see there, right up here. There is a little bit going through, which is great. So now I'm going to basically do the same. Hopefully. This is where Z-bend pliers would really help. If you have them, use them. But I don't think very many people have high-end pliers like that. Yeah, I'm having a little bit of trouble bending this, so what I'm probably going to do is, I don't have any, so I won't do that. That scared me. Okay, so right now I'm just trying to figure out a way to make sure that that doesn't come flying out mid-flight. But right now I think it's pretty secure. So I think the best way to do it is just make it, I don't know if you can see that, but what I did is I made a 90-degree bend and then bent it a little bit more. So that way it shouldn't want to come out unless there's a serious problem. So I can just put that out for a second and go and bend the other one. Just go and bend it. Test fit this. Okay. So it seems like it should hold up pretty well. So what you're going to do next is, because we're pretty sure that that servo is where we want it, there's not any other mounting positions anyway, just going to go and take the screws that are included with the servo and screw the servo in. These are Phillips head screws, so you're going to want a Phillips head screwdriver. Magnetic would be best. There's one of them. And start the second one. And you want to make sure that these go in nice and straight too. Alright, so that's mounted pretty well. I don't know why that keeps on sliding out, but oh well. And next, just gonna pop the servo horn on, make sure it's nice at a 90-degree angle to everything else. The servo horn is what I'm talking about. And you're gonna take that screw that comes with the servo and hopefully not drop it. Basically, again, there's a center hole in the servo horn, and you're going to go and screw that on. There you go. That does sound like a digital servo. So what you're going to do is you want to slide the push-pull rods on first. Actually, seems as though we don't want to use that outside hole. Okay, so made a little bit of a mistake there. Good learning thing. Good learning idea though. So what we are going to want to do is, I don't know if you saw what I was doing there, but I'll put that push rod back in. But basically, because we mounted the push-pull mounts on the very outside, it can't attach to the tilt motor mount. So what we're going to do is we're going to move these two push-pull mounts to the very inside hole on the servo, and that way hopefully we'll still have enough travel in the servo, but it won't be binding up anywhere. So I'm going to go and pull the servo horn off. Leave that screw off to the side and put that down. So I'm going to go ahead and remount these two pieces here. So give me a second, I'll get that done. Okay, so I went and remounted the push-pull mounts. As you can see there, they're on the very inside servo hole. And so now I'm just going to go and mount these up, put the push-pull rods in, and then from there, my fingers are too big, so I'm just going to use my pliers. Alright, there's one. And I'm going to mount the other one. One thing you do want to make sure of when you are mounting the push-pull mounts on the servo is that they're facing almost vertically, so that way you can mount up the push-pull rods. So servo's centered, the tilt mount is centered, so I'm going to take these two screws that came in the tilt mount kit and screw those into the push-pull mounts. If I can get the screw to stay on my driver. Alright. Now if you want, you can go and Loctite these. I will not be Loctiting these. I feel like they should hold strong enough. Chances are I'll probably go back and Loctite them after probably the third flight if they happen to be vibrating loose. I don't know if you can tell, but this is taking a lot of pressure to move this around. I don't feel that the servo will have enough torque to handle that. So I'm going to go and mess around with this for a little bit, and I'll get back to you on basically what I do to it to make it not be so hard for the poor little servo. So yeah, alright. Okay, so I believe I figured out a fix for this, and basically what I'm going to do is take a drill bit a little bit bigger than the size of this and drill through the middle hole, and once that's done I will put it together just like usual. Then you're going to want to thread lock this nut on. That way it doesn't go anywhere. So I have this little drill here. Go and drill through the hole. Probably would have been a little bit better to go and do this on the drill press, but check to make sure that the end nut won't just fall right through that hole that you just drilled. It won't, which is good. Now the reason I'm doing this is so that the push-pull mount can spin freely basically, and I found out that as the servo horn was moving up and down, because the holes on the push-pull mounts are straight and basically at a 90-degree angle to the servo arm, that it would bend the push-pull arms, and that's where all that strain was coming from rather. So I'm just going to go ahead and drill through the other side, and not through my hand. Alright, so I believe this is a new, and because this is a new bottle of thread lock, I'm going to go and open that up. Thankfully I have a multi-tool. What you're going to want to do is just put a little dab of thread lock on the threads. Of course, making sure that your pieces are in right side up. And just a little dab. That's a big dab, but it'll do. Just gonna go and thread that on like you would usually. Like I said earlier, you want it to be on tight enough so it's not going to go anywhere. Just going to go and put a little bit of thread lock on the top, and you don't want to let that sit and dry for a little bit, because it's your yaw, and if you lose your yaw control, it's going to be extremely hard to get your tricopter back down to you. again, I'm going to throw the nut on. Again, want to make sure that's loose enough to be free spinning, but not so loose that you run the risk of losing your tricopter. Again, put a dab of thread lock on top. I'm just going to let that sit for a little while. Actually, I'm probably going to put it on the servo, but your best bet would definitely be to let this sit. So that way the thread lock dries. So I'm just going to go and put this on a servo so that it's off the table and mount it wherever I put my screwdrivers. So again, same as the other 2 times that I've done this, screw that in and you're done for now. And in case you didn't notice, I did go and put the little locking washer on up here to hold the pin that comes across that allows this to pivot. I did go and put that on. I didn't thread lock that set screw, so I'm going to go and do that now. Just because I have the thread lock out. You want to thread lock, really do want to thread lock anything that's metal to metal. If you thread lock anything that's metal to plastic, chances are you're going to destroy the threading on that plastic piece. That's a little bit too much thread lock, so I'm just going to thread that in all the way so the excess comes out. Unscrew it so I can get it back on the rod, and screw it back on, make sure it's nice and tight, and you're done. So that's all finished. I'm going to go and let this thread lock sit for a little bit. Probably overnight is best. So gonna let that go in. Alright, so that's it for the push-pull system. Once it's dried, I'm just going to go and put on the rods as usual, and then put these little screws that hold the rods in, and then that'll be done. So I will go and move on to the straight mounts and mounting the motors. So, alright. Just going to move all these little bags and other little pieces out of the way. So, these motors will require you to solder them to speed controllers. They do include connectors, but even then you're going to have to solder them. I'm undecided as to whether or not I want to go and hard solder these on, but because it is a multi-rotor, if you don't cut your throttle as soon as you hit the ground, you still run the risk of blowing out a motor. So chances are I will go and put bullets on these, which are included, which is awesome. Both male and female ends, so you can put them on the speed controller. Also included are some screws to mount the motor to the motor mount, and a spinner, basically. Prop spinner, so that you can spin your prop, which is a good thing. It's a good thing to do. And the motor mount's just scotch taped on here. I can't pull it off, so I'm just going to go and cut it out. And that's not working either. So I'm going to pause the video now, so that way I can get this out. Oh, well, maybe not. I take back my most recent comment. Alright, so got the motor man out. So, oh, alright. Makes sense to me. Oh, alright. That's quite awesome. Alright, so I'll restrain from putting these motors on right now so I can solder these a little bit easier. So I will be going and putting on all the little bullet connectors. It's probably a good idea too, and also I'll put them on to the ESCs. So, yep, I'm going to go and solder these on. I'm hoping anybody who's watching this video already knows how to solder, whether you learned it in school already, or else I hope some of your teachers have already know how to solder. Otherwise, that's something to look up on YouTube. I won't cover that. So, anyway, see you next section. Okay, so as you can see here, I went and finished soldering all of the bullet connectors to the ends of the ESCs and the motors. One thing you do want to be careful of is when you're soldering these, the female ends, this is a female end on it, need to go on the ESC, and the male ends need to go on the motors. It doesn't matter which bullet goes on which wire, they're all the same for the most part. So I'm just going to put these aside for now until we get to them, and we're going to go into building the frame. And as you can see, the booms, the two front booms have finished drying. What I just did is hung them with some floss and sprayed them with fluorescent red, which turned out to be pink, but should be very high visibility, so I'm pretty happy with the way that came out. And so pull out your main frame. These are just basically the two biggest circles out there. The top one is going to be the one with the larger hole in the center, so this one here. What you want to do is line up the two that you can see through all the holes. Just make sure that you don't rotate it 90 degrees. Some of the holes won't line up. So all these holes are lined up. So the next thing you want to do is figure out which holes you want to use. So for this one, I'm going to be using the two outside holes up here, and the only hole that you can use for the tail is back here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the pen, you can use a pencil if you so wish, and just going to mark each one of these with a little dot. I'm also going to put an arrow up here facing forwards. So little dot there and little dot there. Alright. So next thing you want to do is essentially lay all of these out like so. Get those out of the way. Actually, no. That's not how you want to do it. Yeah, you do want to lay these out. I do suggest grabbing some of your screws and putting them in here. I'm just going to do this one by one, as someone should. And this is why I have a drill out here. The wrong bit. It does come with a little Allen key wrench. If you want to use this, feel free. It's going to take you forever. What you could do is you could just take a grinding wheel or a cutting wheel and just with a Dremel or some form of multi-tool, just cut off right here, and you can just attach that inside your power drill, and it'll be extremely simpler and faster. So I'm going to take this and start to drill through these. And because of the size hole that we went and put in the booms, you will actually have to thread the screw through the boom. Careful, the ends of the screws might be hot, as I just burnt myself with one. Ow. And you don't want to tighten them all the way, because once you get everything all set together, it's not all going to be at the perfect correct angles, and it'll be extremely hard to get the bottom half of the frame on, and so on and so forth. So what I suggest is just doing it as I'm doing now. Almost dropped my drill. That would be good. I have some tape on my bit now. Anyway, so as I was saying, you just want to go ahead and screw all these in just a wee little bit. Again, I almost dropped my drill. So that's just one of the arms. I'm going to go through and do all the arms. I'll let you guys miss that. So I'm just going to go and get all the arms on just like this, and I'll be back. Alright, so I finished screwing these on, and what we're going to do now is basically going to place this on top of here and screw them through one at a time. Screw the rest of the screws through one at a time. Like I said earlier, it's going to be a very tight fit, so that's why you don't want to do this all at once. Just want to make sure everything will line up. And indeed it will. Alright, so one thing what's on my mind also is if you are going to paint your booms instead of using some colored propellers or whatnot, I do not suggest using either whites, grays, black if you're going to be flying at night or close to dusk. Anything that would be remotely close to something that some color that you would see in the sky. Unless you're using it for like surveillance or some other secret activity, you want to be able to see it. Even though in this case we will be flying first person view, so there'll be a camera with a live feed down to me while I'm flying. So while you're flying line of sight, and for your spotter, which you do, it's regulated by the FAA and the AMA, so the two regulating bodies for basically anybody that's going to get in the air, whether it be with real planes or with these RC planes, helicopters, whatnot. You do have to have a spotter at the very least if you're going to be flying first person view. So you should fly with a spotter anyway, but I just want to say, hey, I don't suggest using blues or whites or gray for your boom color. So. That's almost all the way on. Alright. I'm a little bit too tight with that, so I'm just going to loosen this up a little bit. Should have charged my drill too. Do use a fully charged drill when you're doing this. Staple. Alright, so as you can see, I'm having just a little bit of trouble getting this last one on. Not exactly sure why. I do have a little bit of broken wood in here, so I'm just going to get some of these splinters out, hopefully, so that way I can see a little bit better of what I'm doing. So, after a little bit of struggle, I'm still having problems with that one piece, of course. So you just need to mess around with it until you get it to drop in. Keeping in mind that this is a wooden frame tricopter, so you don't want to go forcing anything too hard, or else you run the risk of breaking the frame. And this is just plywood, it's not any sort of super wood or hardwood or anything. So just be careful while you're putting it together. As you can see, I am having a little bit of trouble. I might have not drilled that one hole correctly on the boom, That could be one of the problems I'm having. So what I shall do is just get all these booms in, get the lock, start getting the lock nuts on them. Got a lock nut. I'm going to go close up my knife blade so I can use this as some way of holding on these nuts. These are nylon lock nuts. So what you want to do, there is a difference between the two ends. One end you can actually see has some nylon that keeps it from loosening up when there's some form of vibration in the frame. The other side is just a regular metal nut with thread. So that's the side that you want to use on the basically the inside of the frame. Fumble around with this for a little bit. Yeah, not working for me. So hopefully I can get this started. Yep. All you gotta do is just get started, get the threads going. I'm gonna do that on all the outsides of these. That arm back in. And start the knot on here. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold on to this with my pliers on one end and slowly tighten this down on the other. And what I do have is just a 1/4 inch bit on this. And that's the size of these nuts. So you could use that instead of pliers if you wanted to. I forgot I brought up this little wrench here. I'll do it over here now. And what I am doing right now is I noticed that this is just a bit tight. So I'm going to loosen it up. So basically the bolt comes out this way, but the nut on the end here doesn't move anywhere relatively. And just tighten it back down. And leave it just a little bit of looseness in there. Go down to here on the tail. And wait on that for a little bit. Go to the next one. Again, I'm just doing all the outsides right now, just so that all the booms are in place and they're holding each other together basically. And just doing the same thing I did on the other front boom is I'm pulling the screw out a little bit so I can tighten up the bolts a little bit more. Same deal. And now for the insides. I'm just going to bring the inside ends down so I can begin threading on the appropriate nut end. There's a hunk of wood down in here that's keeping the tail from going all the way on, and that could be a problem, so I'm just going to loosen up this tail enough so I can get down in there and pull out that little piece of wood. There we go. Alright. And yep, I was right. So I did end up misdrilling this last hole by a wee little bit. Quite disappointed in myself for that. Yeah. So I'll deal with that in a moment, and we'll discuss how I'll fix that as soon as we're done with the rest of these screws here. Just a little shard of wood had come up. I lifted up while I was screwing that in, just popped it down. Start right here. As you can see, as I'm working on this, the tail's starting to slide around only because I don't have a screw holding that in right now. Like I said, we'll figure something out as we go along. And this is the last front. I'm just gonna fold this back. Leave a little bit there. Alright, so what are we going to do about this tail? Well, not quite exactly sure. But what I am going to do is I'm going to pull off this boom entirely, smacking myself in the head a couple times in the process. Alright, so we have the front two arms onto the tricopter frame. I'm not sure if you can see this, but the screws do stick out just a little bit. That's fine. If you really want to, you can go and take a rotary tool and cut those off. So, as you can see, there is a little bit of wood splintering up on this. Not exactly sure if you can see that, but up here is splintering off, so I'm just going to attempt to shave some of that off. Alright. gonna put that all safe, put that away, lock this. Alright. So what I'm going to do now, I'm not sure if I'm going to get all of this in frame. Sorry if I've been out of frame a little bit lately, but so. Screw's still hot. So, line up one of your holes at least. I'm going to do the top one just because we've had trouble with it. Alright, so that's through a little bit. I'm going to throw a nut on it, just to hold it in place. Alright, so that's on. So what I'm going to try and do, I'm just going to try this backwards, basically. Alright, so the wood did splinter up a little bit, unfortunately, but hopefully you don't have to go through this if you build one, but I have had to. Generally, I believe this is my fault alone. I didn't drill those holes correctly when I was drilling the wood boom, or the tail boom rather, and that's not going anywhere. So, I'll lock this back for safety. Again, safety first in most situations. And I'm just going to slowly tighten this on, with hopefully no more problems. And sorry if I'm out of frame. So, all the booms are fastened on at this point. They are a little bit loose still. I'm going to leave them like that for a little bit longer until just about everything's ready to go. And the next thing that we have to do is attach motor mounts. If you wish, you can go and mount your motors onto your motor mounts first. I'm undecided onto whether or not I will. Probably with the tail mount I will, just because of the complexity of it. So yeah, let's get started on that now. Again, you need to pull out one of your motor mounts and just line up some of the screws here. Just line up the holes. I'm going to move this off this side. Line up the holes between the motor mount and just the two motor mounts. Right now I am having a little bit of trouble with it hitting this piece right here, the locking washer. I'm having a little bit of trouble with that right now. So I figured out I can push the pivot back a little bit more, which probably won't help any, but we'll try anyway. Pushing the pivot back again, see if that helps any, and it does not. at all. All these are the same size. What I could end up doing is grinding one of these ends off, so for the sole reason to fit it. Which I believe I might have to. Yeah, so what I'm going to do with this to mount it, because I'm having a little bit of fit troubles with our motor mounts here. These arms are a little bit too big, and we're just going to be using the inside mounting holes on this. So what I will be doing is taking this one here, as it has a little, I think it's this one, yep, as it has a little bit of a blemish here. Not sure if you can see the blemish, but it's just right here. So I'm going to end up grinding down, not too much because it's not a big fit issue, but I'm just going to grind down this end, probably to the point of halfway through this hole, just for this reason that it will fit in here, because this little locking washer nut is a little bit too big. Now, given you could go and Dremel down the washer here, but I'd rather just cut off one of these ends. So in the meantime, I'm just going to go and do all the other ones, all the other motor mounts. First, we might be having a problem with all of our motor mounts because of that. Indeed we will. So I'll have to go and mill off, or just grind off an end for each one of these, because we're having clearance issues with these motor mounts being just a little bit too big. So I will go and do that. But first, let's go and put on these for all of them. It won't be too hard to get the motors on once we're done. So, no excuse not to right now. It's going to be the same deal. It's the same screw size, same bolt size. All the screws are the same with these kits. Just checking to make sure everything is having a little bit of trouble finding the holes. Still having troubles. Try this one. A little bit further. A little bit more, and then we'll be able to start the nut. Alright, so take our nut, and my fingers are just a little bit too big to get in there. Apparently so is that. So having a little bit of trouble getting that there. Once you start threading the nut on, then you can put your driver on and drill it on the side. There you go. That's one of them. So basically you just repeat the same process for the other front mount, and there's only one screw on the tail mount, so that shouldn't be too hard. So I will cut it now, at the camera now, save you guys watching me struggle. So anyway, next time I do another video will be once I have all the arms mounted, so see you then. Okay, so we're back, and on the last video I left off with me saying that I'm going to have to grind one of these down. Well, I figure, well, the screws that come with the motors are extremely short, too short to go all the way through the bottom of here, through this motor mounting plate, and then up into the motor. So I figured, well, it'd probably be simply just to mount this straight on here. Well, that's what I'm going to do. So basically for this part now, I'm going to go and mount all the motors and test fit the speed controllers to see how much wire I'm going to need when I make my wiring harness. So anyway, on to this. So what you're going to want to do is have your thread lock available, because you're threading into metal into metal. And I'm going to dump out all the little Phillips head screws that come with the motors. And we'll start with this one here. Now, the way I want to set this up is so that all the wires and the speed controllers run on the outside of the booms, especially on these front ones, so that when you mount your camera you don't have wiring in your shot. On the back, I'm probably just going to put it on, I'm undecided on where I'm going to put it. So it's going to be on one of the two sides. It doesn't really matter. You can put it on the bottom, the top, however you feel like. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place that there, get an idea of where it's going to end up being. And get my thread lock out, my screwdriver, and just put a little dab of thread lock on, if I can just get this. There we go. So you just want to put a little dab of thread lock on. That should be good. Get to my motor. Now you don't want these to be too tight just yet, because you will probably need to adjust where your motor is so that's not touching anything. So I'm not cinching down or anything. Just a little bit of thread lock. That's a lot of thread lock. There we go. Alright, I'm going to screw for this one. Alright. Now if you really wanted to, you don't have to use a fourth screw. You can just get away with 3. There's no reason not to use 4. There isn't anything in the way, so you can still make quick motor changes if you happen to break a motor or something along those lines. So anyway, now what you want to do is center it. It seems pretty well centered right now. You want to center it on that motor mount. And now is when you want to cinch down on all these. Don't want to apply so much torque that you strip out the head, or the threads for that matter. There you go. One done. So I'm going to cut the camera here and go around and do it on all the motors, all the arms. It's the same for every single motor and arm for that matter. All the motor mounts are basically the same, so there's really no reason to go and have me film all of this. So see you then. Alright, so this here is the camera mount rig. It also adds a little bit of vibration dampening for the camera so that you don't get this really horrible vibration in your video while you're flying. Alright, dump all this out. And all these little dots here, those are just bits from the laser cutter. A package of screws and wire. Some Velcro. Put that off to the side. And what it looks like, I don't know, just a little rectangular piece. So, actually it looks like it comes with two of them. Maybe not. Not exactly sure. There isn't any form of instructions that comes with these, as per usual for this manufacturer. So, we're just gonna mess around with it, I guess. Right. And pop that out. Pop each one of these out. Now, these little dots, circular things here, these are just anti-slip washers. If you wanted to put those on your motor, it helps from the slippage on the motor. Not sure if I'll use those because I'm pretty sure the propeller mounts that come with the motors are pretty solid. So just continuing to pop all these little pieces out. Again, I really don't know what all these different pieces are for. I'm still going to pop them all out in case I need them. And these two little pieces here. So just toss the scraps off to the side. This is going to be the same as with the hub kit. You just want to pop all these little circular pieces out. I'm just going to use a pen to do that. Pop this out. And these. Alright. So now, to try and figure out what each of these is for. I'm guessing that this here is just for, I guess it comes with two of them, to mount up your battery and your camera, your battery being back here and your camera being up here. And there's a little bit of splinter there. So I'm going to pop these out too. Alright. I guess put those off to the side. Alright. I'm pretty sure that these three pieces here, what you're going to end up doing is just putting them in here and then angling your camera mount down a bit so you'll be able to keep the ground somewhat in sight on your videos. Similar to that. There. So I will just use this for what I'll be doing. Alright, now what all this stuff is. Honestly, I have no clue whatsoever. Yet I still popped it all out. The one build I have seen done, also, might as well open this up. But the one time I have seen one of these done, it was just using some spare pieces lying around and a piece of wood with the galvanized steel wire wrapped through this, the battery plate that comes with the frame. That's how I saw it done. So I plan on basing this off that, if I can. Right now I'm not sure exactly what each of these pieces are for. So that's what we're going to try and figure out. That may be what this is for. So like I said, I have really no idea how this goes together. I didn't go and pre-build this or whatnot. So I'm struggling a little bit, so I'm just going to go and look up how this is built. And I'll get back to you when I'm a little bit more knowledgeable on what I'm doing. Okay, so as you can see, I did go and glue the little pieces of wire together, and I went ahead and slipped these into the slots that I cut. Couple things that I have noticed right off the bat from playing with this is there isn't that much give. The point of this is to have a lot of give to it. So what I'm thinking I might go ahead and do is sand, even though I just glued this together, is to go and sand around the edges of these slots here. But first I do want to go and test fly this as is. Hopefully it stays, hopefully it does a little bit of vibration dampening for me. Otherwise I'll have to go, you could make these, you want to make these slits back here probably about twice as wide as the wire itself. As far as that goes. One thing I will go and do eventually is you want to drill 2 holes on either side of the wire for each one of these, and then just take a zip tie and zip tie these on. So that way, in the case that this slides out, which it's in pretty tightly, but in the case that this slides out, you don't lose a GoPro or your tricopter, as we will be mounting the battery back here. In fact, I do want to go and take a look at where this will end up sitting. So I end up looking something along the lines of this. I'll probably just run the wire up here just so you can take a look at that. There is a lot of wire to these batteries, which is relatively surprising to me. Also, the Velcro that comes with the frame, you're just going to take that and Velcro this on, just go around the battery. And also, I will probably be putting some Velcro on the bottom of this battery and down here on the tray. And that'll sit nice and tight. Give some weight to this down below the main frame so that the tricopter will stay nice and stable, even more so than it would if the battery is just mounted up here. So it'll lower the center of gravity, which is nice. So I think the next thing I'll probably do is pull out the GoPro that we have here. This is just a white edition Hero 3, really light. Should be pretty good for what we're going to be using it for. So let me clean off the table. We'll just go over the contents of the GoPro. I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with it, familiar with the platform. So I'm just gonna let me clean this off and we'll get going. Okay, so as you may have just seen, I got the GoPro out. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go and stick the GoPro mount onto this one of the camera mounts for the tricopter. We just need the flat mount. So here it is. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to try and figure out the best place for it to get the most surface area on the adhesive. So that there looks about right. It's also about the only place that we could mount it. Butterfingers. So pull off the cover to the adhesive if I can ever get it off, which is looking like I can't. Sheesh. Alright. So again, figure out the best place to place it and squish it down. One thing that you can do is heat the adhesive with a heat gun. That is a good suggestion to do. So I'm just going to set that and let it sit. And just so you can see it, there we go. And when we're flying, we're going to want to have the camera tilted down just a little bit so that you can see the ground with it. That's a big thing that you want to be able to do, is be able to see the ground. And I'm just going to slide this in to see how well it balances, which is actually pretty good. They both weigh about the same, both the battery and the GoPro. So that's a good thing. Alright, so there you go. I'm going to let this sit for a little bit. I'll probably go and mount this all up to the tricopter now. So anyway, on to the next video. Alright, so we finished the camera mount here. So the next thing that we need to do is mount that to the tricopter. So what you want to do is line up the screw holes. Have a couple of the screws that are included with anything from here on. Put those in and take your locking nuts. And you just want to try and figure out about how far in these nuts will end up going and mark that, because we will be cutting these screws. As you can see, they go pretty far down into the battery area, so I hope this comes up. Magic marker would definitely be a lot easier for this. I'm just using the gel pen I've been using this entire time. Cap that and put it off to the side. And yes, I can kind of see those marks. Alright. Put all that off to the side for now. So I have a little bit of space. And what we're going to do is we're going to trim these. Now, I'm pretty sure that the camera can't see the marks that I left, so I won't bother trying to make it see the marks that I left. But basically, you want to cut you want to cut where those marks are. So, and these screws will get very hot when you're using the Dremel. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to take my multi-tool and grasp onto that. I do suggest wearing some eyewear. I just have this nice pair of glasses here, of which one of the lights is out on the side. Anyway, you do want to wear some eyewear when doing this. Alright, so that's one. I have this little sponge from when I was trying to solder this. I'll just put that down there, along with this, just so I get them off of my table. Trying to figure out about where those marks are again. And do the next one. Alright, so there's your two screws. If you want, you can go and clean up your cuts, which I'll do right now. That looks about right. So, there you have it. There's your two screws. I'm just going to let these cool off on the sponge a little bit more, because they are still pretty hot. Yeah. So, I'm just going to put that off to the side for now and bring back the tricopter. Alright. So, line up the holes again. There we go. Just gonna try and get these nuts on. Tight spaces with big fingers. Again, sorry if I'm not getting this all in frame. That didn't work. Pull off these glasses. Alright, so I'm just going to leave that like that for now. Do the other one. Drop that down and screw this on. Nope, didn't work yet. Easier way to do this might just be to use some pliers. Of course, I just put mine away. Okay, so now what you're going to need, if I can find it, is my screwdriver. The battery on my drill is dead, but you don't really need a big, powerful drill to do this. Plus, you don't want it to be too tight anyway. So I'm just gonna grasp onto this with my multi-tool. Just tighten these basically just to the point where you start to get to the nylon and the bolts, where it starts to become difficult to screw it in. That seems pretty well on there. So there you go. There's your battery and camera mount. So the next thing that we need to do is go and mount our speed controllers, which are all right here, all three of them, and do the soldering that's required of those. So I'm going to stop here and get all my wires ready to go, get my zip ties, and we'll continue on.